Hey, Rebel Rouser. I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. So, over the weekend, All-Star Comic-Con in Virginia, Aaron Goins of the Star Wars Bookworms podcast was one of the folks in attendance and was checking out a panel that featured Tom Kane. And if you're not familiar with the name, well, he's the guy who has done the voice of Yoda in the Clone Wars and Rebels cartoon series when Frank Oz hasn't been asked to do it on a whim. And so he's been the regular guy handling the Yoda voices. Anyway, he was on a panel and Aaron happened to be in the room for it, and there was a tweet that Aaron shared that is kind of blowing up basically because of what he quoted Tom Kane as saying while he was on this panel. It basically has to do with the fact that there are many movies in development at Lucasfilm right now, many Star Wars movies specifically, I guess we should say, because technically speaking, Indiana Jones would be in development at Lucasfilm right now, so yeah, that counts too, but no, we're talking about Star Wars movies. And so here is the text of the tweet that Aaron shared with his followers. He says, Tom Kane seems to be somewhat in the know, but very hesitant to share. Claims there are at least 9 Star Wars films in various stages of development, some individual character stories yet to be announced, but definitely not Yoda, quote unquote. So, of course, this opens up the question, what are these at least 9 movies, naturally? And so I don't think we can count episode 9 in this because episode 9 is actually in pre-production. It is past the development stage, so it is not going to be considered one of these 9 movies. Then you get into the Rian Johnson trilogy. How many of those movies can you actually say is in development? I mean, certainly the first one is, but as far as the other two go, well, I'm not sure you can entirely count the trilogy in this. I think you might only be able to count the first movie in the trilogy because that's the one that's being developed. I mean, maybe it's the case that Rian Johnson is planning the whole arc for this trilogy and he's giving Lucasfilm a treatment or some other broad outline for it. So in that case, you could say all 3 of them are in development, but you know what? I think it could go either way, so let's just count it as 1.5, shall we? And then you get the Benioff and Weiss movies, and they have been tapped to produce a series, not a trilogy, a series of movies for Lucasfilm. And so what a series means, well, you know, that's certainly up in the air. It certainly means more than one. And a trilogy is a rather specific thing. And the fact that they didn't say a trilogy, but they said a series, well, you know, that doesn't really sound like a trilogy to me. And so if it was just going to be, 2 movies, then it would be, a pair of movies or something like that. So let's go with the minimum and say 4. Let's say that the plan is for at least 4 movies in a series from Benioff and Weiss. Now then you have the question, well, how many are actually in development right now? So for fun, let's just throw an average on that one and say 2. So right now we're looking at between Rian Johnson's and the Benioff and Weiss, that's 3.5 movies. So we've got between 5 and 6 movies, maybe 6 and 7 movies that are in development that have nothing to do with those, all right? That's a lot of character movies. Now, we know that there have been rumors of Boba Fett movies kicking around and rumors of Obi-Wan Kenobi movies kicking around. Let's just say for the heck of it that that's legit on both cases. And so there's 2. So now we're dealing with 4 or 5 more character-driven movies potentially that have yet to be announced. Maybe they're not all character-driven movies. Maybe there is yet another series or another trilogy of some kind that they've got up their sleeve that they aren't talking to us yet, and they're not talking about to us yet. So it might not all be character movies, but hey, you know what? It's kind of working for Marvel with all of their character movies. So wouldn't it be interesting if they planned a series of movies where they did individual character movies and it built up to something like the Avengers movies do? And the other thing that you have to think about is, are these character movies going to be about characters that we already know? I mean, so far, the Han Solo movie, the reaction to it, part of that is going to be figuring out how much of the reaction and how much of the box office has to do with the fact that maybe folks don't want to see the old characters recast and do younger versions thereof. Maybe it's just that, the movie wasn't as good of a movie as the rest of the 3 that came out before it. And so it's just suffering at the box office by comparison simply because it's, 20 points lower on its movie critic reviews or anything like that. They really do kind of have to figure that out before they can move forward, I think, with a character movie of any kind as far as a character that we already know, because man, there's going to be a lot invested in it. And there's a real domino effect to consider too. I mean, it's risky to go with character movies that build up to one big kind of team movie like Marvel did with building up to the Avengers, because if some of those elements don't work, then it kind of doesn't give you the same legs to stand on when you're actually trying to produce the big team movie, you know? And you kind of saw that with the Marvel Netflix series as well, with Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage all getting very good reviews, and then Iron Fist getting not so much reviews, and that was the one that was leading into the Defenders, and so, you know, that kind of knocked the wind out of the Defenders' sails a little bit, and the Defenders ultimately, you know, didn't get as stellar of reviews as the first three of the Marvel Netflix series either. So it's a rather risky proposition, but certainly one that Marvel has done very well for the most part. And, you know, it's something that Star Wars could learn by osmosis, being a part of Disney and probably having a little bit more insider access to Marvel and their process and, say, you know, any other franchise might. Like DC certainly not getting a look at what Marvel does and how successfully they do it in the same way that Lucasfilm would have the opportunity to do so. But let's assume that there are going to be 5 character movies, that there are 5 character movies in development right now that have nothing to do with Boba Fett or Obi-Wan, that are entirely separate from those. Who do you think those 5 characters are? Share a comment wherever you're catching this, and let me know what you think. And that's going to do it for the video version of the podcast here. Over on the audio version at sw7x7.com/iTunes, I'll do Last Jedi trivia there, so do check that out. But for now, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.